Good evening, everybody. My predicament is like that of this famous Western actress's ninth husband. On her nuptials night, somebody was asking this guy, look, why are you looking so anxious? She anyway has the experience. So he said, no, I don't know how to make it interesting. So coming after so many speakers, it's a real challenge to make this session interesting for an audience that is waiting for dinner. So, Mr. Sri Krishna Kulkarni, Professor Sahadev Sarkar, Professor Manish Thakur, dignitaries, distinguished alumni, members of the faculty, students, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here on the day of Bhai Dooj, and despite the many compelling attractions which I know IIMC offers. Let me first start by congratulating my institute on its 63rd Foundation Day and thanking Professor Manish Thakur for inviting me. Forget the alphabetical order of the institutes, but for the record, IIM Calcutta is older than IIM Ahmedabad by 27 days. Calcutta is 14th November and Ahmedabad is 11th December of 1961. Never in history have 27 days mattered more, I think. There's no greater honor than being asked to speak at your own institute. And I was intrigued, why did the institute ask me to come and speak? You heard the list of predecessors who have spoken here, right? Professor Sarkar spoke about it. I'm not a CEO. I'm not a startup founder who's become a billionaire, nor a hotshot academic. So it's natural that I feel like a bit of an imposter to be speaking on this day. I have not checked with the institute why they called me, because sometimes truths can be very embarrassing. In any case, early November, when, thanks to the active social media outreach of IIM Calcutta, the word got around with my batchmates that I have been asked to come and deliver this talk. They proffered three reasons, from the trivial to the serious. The first was, half the batch had passed using my class notes. And the photocopy vendors in Thakurpukur, the Union of Photocopy Vendors in Thakurpukur, attributed their not so small fortune to me and recommended to IIM Calcutta that I should be invited to speak. The second reason was, you made unconventional career choices, human resources, public-spirited work, editorial work. So perhaps the institute felt it necessary to send out a message that these areas too need management. Even the Nobel Peace Prizes go to the most obscure people sometimes because their area of work is important, right? So something like that. The third, which is probably the reason, at least I would like to believe so, is it is 14th November, Children's Day, and the institute must have felt someone engaged with school education, one of our own, with the largest social sector organization in the country, Azmi Premji Foundation, why don't we call him? I'll leave it there and not speculate any further. Today is the Foundation Day. It's not an inaugural or a convocation. So the topic of the lecture should be fitting, right? So I have chosen to speak on institution building in modern India, principles that are drawn from parables. Institution building, the first part of the topic is fairly clear. I don't need to elaborate. The phrase modern India needs some elaboration. So Ramachandra Guha, arguably our country's foremost modern historian and a distinguished alumnus of this institute, has said that in 1947, India was the most reckless political experiment, and if it is likened to startups, no one would have invested here. Yet, today, 76 years since then, since independence, we have some wonderful institutions. My talk today is about the more recent institutions, the post-independence institutions. I'm not covering much older institutions with long-standing repute. Let's take the four Shankar Mats, which are there from the 8th century AD, or closer home, the St. Xavier's College here in Calcutta, which is from 1835, or the Aligarh Muslim University, which started in 1875. That's not what I'm covering. I'm talking about post-independence institutions and what can we learn from them and from the institution builders. Stories are remembered, data is forgotten. That is human nature. So my entire talk is about stories. And in any lecture of this kind, there are bound to be omissions and commissions. Right? So please forgive the omissions and indulge me in the commissions. Let's start with, why do some organizations survive and grow beyond the founders? To my mind, the first of the three reasons is an organization becomes an institution if it has a purpose which is beyond profit. It is not a coincidence that long-standing institutions in the world are primarily educational in nature, not for profit, by law and design. The second reason is that an institution exists only so long as it remains socially useful. Society does not let such organizations die. So if somebody goes after, the bigger, faster, grander kind of dreams, that doesn't actually survive. You may build the biggest factory, the tallest building, the fastest car, but it will get eclipsed very soon. However, institutions created with a purpose, they serve a social need and they live long. So my first story is that of Martandavarma Shankaran Valliyathan, Dr. M.S. Valliyathan, who set up the Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute. When he set it up, he charted a unique path for the institute. He combined medicine with technology and sociology, likening it to the triple helix. To him, the discipline of sociology stood shoulder to shoulder with medicine and technology. The third reason is institutions have life. You feel it. When you walk into an institution, you can see that they are living, and some which are dead. If you walk into the portals of the University College at Oxford, established in 1249 Common Era, which is 774 years ago, you will see it is living. All organizations are like human bodies. They have been likened to be like the Sharira. Sharira, by definition, has Balya, which is birth, and Yauvana, which is growth, and Vardhakya, which is decay. The word Sharira itself comes from the root word Shiryate, which is decay. So institutions are bound to decay. In India, the funny part is we don't allow public institutions to die. We make them limp along and keep them on life support, like in the ICU. Private institutions die. Let's now look at how institutions are different from organizations. We use the word sometimes interchangeably, but they're not. Firstly, institutions can learn and renew themselves. They are generative, meaning they consistently produce new material. They are interpretative, which means they make meaning of developments, and they of course change with time. The Aitareya Brahmana of Rigveda says, Charaiveti, Charaiveti, which means keep moving, keep moving. Institutions that survive actually keep moving. Second, institutions record and document the path they traverse. And the best example of this is the Supreme Court, an outstanding institution. And it's not about just dry records. Institutions document things where stories are remembered, but data may be forgotten. Thirdly, institutions respect traditions without becoming ritualistic. For example, our parliament has traditions, like the question hour and the select committees and so on and so forth, all designed for representation, deliberation, and decision. Even today, when this Foundation Day is being celebrated by IIM Calcutta, I would believe that this tradition is replenishing the life source of IIM Calcutta. Let's move on now to 7 behaviors that I believe distinguish institution builders, and that's the central theme of this talk. The first one is, like Emerson said, every great institution is the lengthened shadow of a single person. This person's character determines the character of the organization. Such a person believes that they are building something which survives them. So Narayan Murthy, when he founded Infosys, is on record to have said that he wants to build a company that is multi-generational. So Infosys is an institution today. Second, such leaders take the blame and share in the good. Let me illustrate with an example. In 1979, when the satellite launch vehicle SLV-3 was launched, some of you may be aware of this, it failed. And it fell into the Bay of Bengal. The satellite fell into the Bay of Bengal. Satish Dhawan was the chairman of ISRO, and Abdul Kalam was the mission director. The country was livid because 20 crore rupees had been wasted and the satellite was in the sea. Dhawan took the press conference the next day, and Dhawan took the entire blame on himself. And he said, look, I trust in my engineers. If there is anyone to be blamed, it is me. Next year, in July 1980, the launch cycle was repeated. Again, Dhawan was the chairman and Kalam was the mission director. This time, the satellite Rohini was launched into the near-Earth orbit, and it was a success. There was a difference, though. Satish Dhawan didn't come for the press conference. He sent Kalam to take the press conference, demonstrating that, look, when it is the blame, I will take it. When it is the credit, you will take it. That marks institutional builders. Let me move on to another story. And this is about institution builders taking responsibility for attracting top talent. Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, founded in 1909, consistently tops the university rankings, for those of you who follow that. You may not believe this, it was not always so. It was Satish Dhawan, who was the director of Indian Institute of Science in the 60s, who attracted C.N.R. Rao, in solid state chemistry, G.N. Ramchandran in molecular biology, E.C.G. Sudarshan in theoretical physics, and built departments around them. Today, if Indian Institute of Science is so reputed, it is Dhawan's ability to attract top talent. One more case, if you take the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, probably the premier research institution in science in India, it all goes back to Bhabha. Bhabha got Govind Swarup in radio astronomy, Obaid Siddiqui in genetics, B.V. Srikantan in astrophysics, and built teams around them. And today, they are the best departments in the country. Permit me an aside. Bhabha's style was you get the right people and build departments around them. Vikram Sarabhai's style was you define the organization structure and roles and get the right person into the role. Both approaches will work, but Bhabha and Sarabhai approached institution building in two very different ways. Another example, on the right you see P.M. Bhargava. Now, P.M. Bhargava founded the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology in Hyderabad. He made an effort to persuade Lalji Singh, who was at the University of Edinburgh. 2 years he was after him to come to CCMB. Lalji Singh came, discovered the DNA fingerprinting technology, and today in India, if we are able to have the technology at a fraction of the cost of the West, it is because P.M. Bhargava was able to get Lalji Singh. So also P.K. Kelkar in IIT Kanpur. Many of these examples I am giving are from science and technology. So just to restore the balance, let me also say, if you take the National Law University system in the country, the National Law School of India in Bangalore, and the NUJS here in Calcutta, both of them owe their premier standing to Madhav Menon. So the point I'm trying to make is, institution builders go around and scout for great talent and build departments around them. Fourth, these leaders recognize the value of organization building. So they value financials, structure, systems, succession, often very conservative about money. They are both pound-wise and penny-wise. They will conserve capital. They will build resilience so that the institution can weather inevitable storms. A classic example which I am personally aware of was when I used to work with Asian Paints, which undoubtedly is one of India's best managed companies. The late K. Rajagopalachari was the director, a storied director at Asian Paints. And in 1997, one of the promoter families, the Champaklal Choksi family, placed its block of shares on sale to ICI, a competitor. And many of us employees were very distraught at that time. When your company is getting sold to a competitor, it's not a pleasant situation. Rajagopalachari, who was a professional who had risen the ranks, told us that you work for the company, not for any one family, placing the organization before any individual. Probably, Varghese Kurian will count amongst the top 3 institution builders in India. When Kurian is called India's first social entrepreneur much before the term became fashionable in management schools. In 1998, India became the world's largest milk producer. And Kurian was at his peak of his popularity. Several 100,000 dairy farmers considered him next only to God. And a journalist asked him, would you care to run for political office? You are so popular. You will win hands down. And Kurian said, look, it will be unethical and immoral for me to transfer the loyalty of the dairy farmers to myself when that loyalty is duly owed only to Amul. Again, clearly placing the organization before the individual. Fifth, such institution builders think beyond their core discipline. They infuse a soul into the institution. I mean, when you come to IIM Ahmedabad, when you see Louis Kahn's architecture, when you go to Bangalore, and when you see Stein Doshi and Bhalla's architecture, the new campus of IIM Calcutta, where you see Christopher Charles Benninger's architecture, all this is because the directors, the leaders have thought about infusing a soul into the institution. Interestingly, many of these leaders are also connoisseurs of art, music, and culture. On the left, you see the entrance to the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Bombay, and you see the entrance to the library and the mural of M.F. Hussain, and that's Bhabha's contribution. On the right, you see the Pasteur Institute. Founded in 1887, the Pasteur Institute has been home to 10 Nobel laureates in physiology and medicine. Louis Pasteur himself is buried in that institute, in the chapel there, reminding current researchers why the institution was started in the first place. So, leaders infuse a soul into the institution. Sixth, such leaders embrace critics. Let's start with Nehru. Nehru sowed the seeds of many institutions in the country and set the culture, we know that. In his first cabinet, there was Ambedkar as the law minister from the Republican Party, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee as the industries minister from the Hindu Mahasabha, and Shanmugam Chetty as the finance minister, of course from the Congress, but a known baiter of Nehru. This is because Nehru believed that independence had come to India, not to the Congress party, and wanted to assemble the best people, even if they were the critics. That was long before Obama made it fashionable with his cabinet of rivals. Talking of Nehru, he was, of course, a follower of Harold Lasky and the Soviet socialist model of development. But he would always insist that the planning papers of the country goes to economists across the world. And the planning commission members would come back and tell Nehru, we have sent it, everybody thinks it's a great plan, and your 5-year plans are good. So Nehru would ask them, have you sent it to Milton Friedman? Milton Friedman, as many of you know, was the author of Capitalism and Freedom from the Chicago School. And Nehru was very particular about knowing what does Friedman say. So Nehru not only cared to listen, but also greatly valued the opinion of his critics. Again, coming back to Satish Dhawan. Satish Dhawan was the chairman when Aryabhatta was being launched. And he called a meeting of 200 of the people then. Now ISRO is 26,000 people. At that time, he called a group of 200 people, starting from mission directors at the level of Kalam and Rodham Narasimha and U.R. Rao, at that level, plus the junior most engineer. 200 people assembly he called and put the Aryabhatta design to test. He said, look, please critique this. Tell me what is wrong and what is right. One engineer sitting in the back row stood up, and when Kalam was presenting, he said, look, the propulsion design is wrong. Kalam hushed him. Hushed is a IIM Calcutta word, I'm using it. Kalam ignored that engineer. Satish Dhawan, who was sitting in the front row, stopped Kalam and said, look, that engineer owes a serious response. Please respond to him seriously. Kalam has recounted this and said, that is culture building. Everybody in the institution should feel that their voice will be heard. And that's what Dhawan said. There is this famous story of Winston Churchill's wife, Clementine, writing to him. I'll keep it for another day. I know it's quite late in the evening, so I'll perhaps skip that one. Seventh, and the last, in my view, behavior of institution builders. Institution builders believe in firm, consistent action to uphold a principle. It obviously comes with some sacrifice. It comes with upholding a principle, always comes with some consequence. So Professor T.V. Rao of IIM Ahmedabad once told me that when he joined IIM Ahmedabad, one of his senior colleagues took him aside and whispered in his ear about how the institute will just not tolerate plagiarism, and how another senior faculty member had been asked to go on account of plagiarism. So Dr. T.V. Rao, who is a behavioral scientist, talks of this as part of IIMA's folklore, and then says that Ravi Mathai, who was the director of IIM Ahmedabad, set the standards very clearly. What's in, what's out. And Dr. Rao goes on to further describe such institution builders as the highest form of leaders. In the early 70s, much before it became an IT behemoth, Wipro was a vegetable oil producing company. In Amalner, in Maharashtra, there was a factory and there was a salesperson who was selling vegetable oils. Salespersons those days were allowed to travel second AC train. So this salesperson traveled second class, sleeper class, and then claimed second AC train fare. The factory manager suspended him pending inquiry, saying that, look, this was an attempt to make money on the side. It's quite fine if he had traveled second AC and claimed second AC fare, but it's not okay if you travel second class and claim second AC fare. The union went on strike, saying that it is too trivial a matter and it doesn't deserve a suspension. Azim Premji was the young chairman of Wipro, and Azim Premji stood by the factory manager and said that, look, this is a matter of integrity, and in matters of integrity, there is no gray. The strike went on for 3 months. The factory suffered a few crore rupees of losses for what was an issue of about maybe 200 rupees. 3 months later, the employees' union came back, accepted the principle, and this incident is now part of Wipro folklore. And I would reckon that the few crore rupees that was lost in the 70s is nothing when compared to what Wipro has gained in culture and performance over the next 5 decades. So therefore, in summary, institution builders believe that they are building something that will survive them. They take the blame and share the good. They take responsibility for attracting top talent, recognize the value of organization building. They infuse a soul into the institution. They embrace critics, and they believe in firm, consistent action. Institution building cannot be left to chance. It needs design, it needs work. And every one of us is an architect of the institutions we are fortunate to be part of. Thank you.